SISTA Reasoning, Groundation number 1, DAWTA Jean and Sister Jacqueline by Rastafari. If we allow ourselves to be bogged down with the experiences of I ancestors to the effect that I become dysfunctional in mind, soul, and body, how then can I move forward when grievance and bitterness have clogged the mind? Rastafari, Wisemind Publications. Copyright Wisemind Publications 2018. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced or stored without prior permission of the publisher. All rights reserved. No part of this 2023 recording may be reproduced, stored, or utilized without prior permission of the recorder. SISTA Reasoning, written by Rastafari, edited by Adrian Dario, cover design by Antonio Barrett, layout by Flaco Tafari, published by Wisemind Publications, distributed by Wisemind Publications. Contact rasflaco@gmail.com, wisemindpublications@gmail.com. Table of Contents, page 6, The Levity of Rastafari in Your Early Days. Page 10, The Attitude and Treatment of the DAWTA. Page 12, How did the Jamaican society view Rastafari sisters wearing locks? Page 15, Difference in the Trod of Kingman and DAWTA. Page 17, Groundation. Page 21, Parenting. Page 24, Vaccinations. Page 27, How do you see the international Rastafari community raising funds for the DAWTA's quarter? Page 28, The Order of the Nyabingi. Page 30, Message to the international Rastafari community, especially the sisters. The Levity of Rastafari in Your Early Days. DAWTA Dean. In my youthful days, that is to say age 13 and under, I was not a Rastafari during those days. I used to listen to my father and was afraid of what he used to say. He always says he doesn't want to leave his first child here in Babylon. He will take her to Africa. I learned about Africa from my grandparents and from my teachers in school. They used to say that Africa is a place with plenty lions who will eat us up if we go there, so I never want to go to Africa. My father was a man who walked around the community preaching about Africa. Anytime I heard his voice preaching as he approached the house, I would always run under the bed because I don't want to be taken to this place called Africa. My childhood days, I knew nothing about Rastafari. When I was 20 years old, I questioned a Rastaman to find out what Rastafari was all about. I listened to his teachings and soon realized what my father was really talking about. At the age of 21 years old in 1969, I became a Rastafari. Sister Jacqueline, in my youthful days, I not living as Rastafari, but listening to my father and the instructions that he always gave us, along with the discipline and order. I would just listen and humble myself. At the age of 24, I began to associate more with Rastafari individuals to learn more of the faith and movement. My first experience was at the Nyabingi held at the Pitford Nyabingi grounds. My father, who is Adam Chambers, was Rastafari following the teachings of the 12 tribes of Israel in Jamaica. In the year 1994, I attended the Nyabingi gathering at Granville Pit for because it was the closest to where I was living in Trelawney. Although Nyabingi was held in other parishes in Jamaica, it was too far for me to attend. During the Nyabingi, I attended ancient Bongo Wat presentation, was very upful, and I now see where in that presently many things is lacking in Nyabingi House today. There are lots of different energies that now exist from due to the absence of ancient Bongo Watto and ancient Bongo time. DAWTA Dean. Bongo Watto was a very strict person in his days. Some people may not like him for his strictness, whereas some others will. I was one who liked Bongo Watto for his firmness. I grew up with my grandfather, who was a deacon in the Baptist church, and he was a very austere man, and I get to learn the good lessons of strictness. As such, I really appreciate Bongo Watto. He stayed on the righteous path, which enabled each one to look into their mistakes. The attitude and treatment of the DAWTA Dean. It was somewhat questioning how it was said and done to make the DAWTA to be such a righteous person, as such you dare not criticize. However, some of the things were really questionable. It seems like an overreacting form of strictness. For instance, someone gave me some money to deliver to a person. I never know if that woman was in her period cycle. She was not supposed to even hand over money to any brethren. I told Bongo Devon that someone gave me some money to deliver to him. When I approached Bongo Devon, he said, "What happened? The daughter Irie?" Quote unquote. I replied, "Yes, I had no knowledge of the meaning of the word Irie. Bongo Devon said, "What about your time? You in your time?" It was that time I knew he was talking about the period time. I slowly replied, "Oh, it just started a couple days now." Bongo Devon shouted, "Then how you expect to take money out of my hand? You're unclean. Don't come give me any money. Keep that. I don't want any money. And don't take any money from anyone to carry come give me when you in your time. That's wrong. You're rude. Don't do that again, you unclean self." I started to cry. Tears started to roll down my face. I never heard from I was born that I was unclean, and it was so cruel and so sinful. I was scorned and given a tongue lashing that was one of the strictness that I think was overreacting. When I mentioned the incident to other sisterns, they replied he should not have to behave that way and not to embarrass you. Some of these teachings were created by some Rastaman, which was not really biblical. A sistren should study herself and know how to behave on the bingy ground and know her days. If your time is 3 or 4 days before the bingy, don't attempt to go to the ISIS because sometimes it can be a little earlier or a little late. If the sistren is at bingy, and that should happen to make sure no one sees anything on your clothes. If it does happen and no one is aware, you take your time and leave the bingy ground. You cannot walk through the tabernacle. You have to find another area around the bingy ground to make your exit. The teachings of His Majesty shows where the female has a role to play, which is the alpha and omega balance. How did the Jamaican society view Rastafari sisters wearing locks? DAWTA Dean. Way back in the early days, a woman wearing locks was an intolerable situation for some of us. I used to move with a group of Rasta in the Trelawney Hills. We had to walk from Freeman's Hall to Albert Town. We generally like to walk as the brethren don't like to take the bus because they could sit in a seat that a woman was having her period was sitting on. As sistrins, we had to walk with them. When we were walking to Duncan's to visit another brethren to hold a bingy with him, as there were not many brethren in Trelawney, my father never had the facility for a bingy ground because the yard where he used to live belonged to grandmother's, and it had tombs in the yard, and Rasta don't visit those places. As such, we had to pass Clarkstown to reach our destination, which was over 4 miles of walking. The people did not think that Rasta women wear underwear, and they always wanted to lift up the clothes of the sistren to prove for themselves. This day in questioning, my sister and I was passing through on our own business, and when we were returning from Clarkstown, we saw 2 women coming out of their yard and was following us up. One was saying aloud, "Me have to see if them have on drawers." My sister was ready to fight. She was that kind of person who fights bald-head women and shoves them down and steps on them. She was a kind of rebel. I was not a fighter from school days. My sister was always fighting for me, and my father always said that I was worthless. I did not want to be in any fight with these 2 approaching women. My sister was a rebel and loved to fight. She said to me, "Prepare yourself for fight. I go lick them. I go pick them up and drop them if them come." I did not know to make this war and started to think about how we could prove to these people that we have on underwear without exposing ourselves. Maybe I would take it. I know that I have on my clothes and would be glad for them to know that. But my sister shouted, "Don't touch me. Touch who?" She was ready to fight. One thought came to my mind was to grab elastic off my underwear and flick it against my skin so that it makes a clicking sound. I said to my sister, whose name was Valerie, "Let us try this thing, because the police will come." My sister said, "A murder, me nah take them lick." I always remind my sister that she doesn't know Rastafari liberty as she loves too much war. Valerie would reply, "Dean, is this so? Me and you nah go agree. Me have to go fight for 2 away one time." Valerie said I should flick my elastic first, and it made the click sound. The woman shouted, "Oh, that one have on. What about the next one?" My sister shouted back, "See it there? What you want me to have on? You want come again? Come now?" The woman replied, "All right, them have on." One of the 2 women who did not want war said, "Una galang wona go, una have on una clothes." It would be embarrassing if that thought did not come in my mind, as my sister was determined to fight, so these are some of my bad experiences. People also said to us that the long dress we were wearing was not necessary and it was only put on dead people. However, in those days, we had the Yahweh groups who came after us wearing the long dress. We had the blouse with sleeve also and cuff. We told them that we were wearing the ancient dress just like ones in the Bible. Now the people around could not understand the growing of locks. One occasion, one woman grabbed and broke off a piece of my locks, which was rolled up, hanging down. We called it the lock seed. I said to her, "If it was not you, I would warn you to do that. Because you break off my precious locks and thrown it on the ground, old people always say that their hair must not be thrown on the ground." Because of what the woman did, I said, "Lightning, thunderball, and earthquake. It red pon you." I gave her a stern warning, and no one ever did that again to me. They could not understand why we grow our locks. It reaches up to a stage where people no longer attack us again. Sister Jacqueline. I get a few experiences out in the street, but the majority was with my family, like my mother. When I started growing locks, my mother started to talk about the money she spent on me for my high school education and all of those things that were getting to my head. So I moved out of her place and stayed away on the Bongo Cutty Hills and continued to live up and move away from the hostile people who would sometimes scorn you and say, "How nice girl like you come turn Rasta and gone mash up yourself." I know it was the best thing I had ever done. When my father found out that I was smoking herbs, he advised me to make sure I can build my own spliff and did not give I a fight. My father would also say, I took Rastafari liberty deeper than him. I have one brother, two sisters. Difference in the trod of the Kingman and DAWTA. DAWTA Dean. Living in the hills was just an experience of the time in the early days. Why we would go to the hills with the brethren to sit down and learn. We had time to sit in with the birds and nature itself, not hearing anyone with different ideas. It was the Rastafari moment of meditation. In this time, we are more open to people around. We see them going on with all sort of things. Sometime I don't mind living in the hills because of that quietness and the Rastafari vibes and the meditation, as it's hard to do that now when we are out in the public with other people with so much interference going on, such as quarrels, people telling other people to go suck their mother, or a motor car passing with blasting exhaust. If we were in the hills, we would not hear those. It was good that we were in the hills. Learning about Rastafari, some wonderful visions came to eye. It was a blessing to stay alone in the hills around the fire key and just looking into space. Sometimes something comes before the natural eye and you see angels moving around and also hearing voices from the mother and father of creation teaching, who give us guidance of how to walk. Also, we chant nice words from the Psalms of King David. That is the meditation I receive in the hills. How to walk. Sometimes the Spirit would say to me, "How about you, baby? You're not going to look for him." I got up right away and went to visit my youth, who was hungry at the time. I don't know how to say this, but when I was in the hills, I learned how to flash lightning, meaning the brethren said I should call on the Almighty I send the lightning. I do it and it happens. I have been doing this for a period of time. Now one day something happened. I was afraid. I was walking in the town warning the people, "Move out of Babylon. Watch it. The impending doom will reach you if you don't give up flesh and serve Rastafari." Remember, in the days of Jesus, it was the same way. People did not want to listen and judgment take them. Lightning, thunderball, and earthquake. Brethren, I saw one light flash from out of my mouth and reach over the hillside and flash. Click, click. I got so frightened. It was like out of my mouth the light flashed and traveled across the coconut tree, which was between the two tall trees. The thunder was so loud. I then said to myself, it seems like I am going too far in your business. I have a limited time. As such, I don't stop from bawling out for lightning anymore. Indeed, these days were very significant. Groundation, DAWTA Dean. Groundation was ceaseless chanting, and even one had to cook a meal. There were others who continued the chanting. As soon as you had your meal, you will return to the chanting. Sometimes brethren take food for others who were, so that they can find time to eat and return to duty. From the ceaseless ISIS stopped, many Rastafari began to die. In the early days, years passed without any Idrin or Sistrin becoming ancestors. We had a strong and firm belief that Rasta would not see death. They would live forever. Rasta was not getting sick, only a little fresh cold. I can remember one night I was sleeping outside in the pouring rain and did not realize it until someone came and waked me up. I did not even cough. All of a sudden, people started to get sick. Some suffered from malnutrition. It is not because Rasta don't eat flesh, but due to the overcooking of vegetables. The nurses said doctors began to say that Rasta should use a drop of salt in their meals, and it would seem like from that we start to return to salt. It weakened the temple, and that iritical vibes were not strong as before. First time in every bingi, when Rasta say lightning, you see lightning flash. The ital was flavored by many hot peppers. It was like the old-time cooking with no salt and plenty pepper. We really need to forward in the ancient livity once more. In the early days, the Nyabingi chanting was not done in a tabernacle, but closed four-post structure with a brace. The roof was made from coconut bough. The structure was not big to hold everyone. Most of the ones inside were Nyabingi drummers and ones who know chants. Individuals who did not know the chants stayed outside and rocked the Nyabingi. As time went by, the coconut bough was replaced by the thatch roof. Some Nyabingi grounds still have the ancient design, whereas others have concrete structures called a tabernacle. One of the ancient chants that was loved by Bongo Watto and Bongo Time. The earth is Rastafari and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the sea and established it upon the floods. Who shall ascend in the hills of Iration, or who shall stand in the holy place? I hath clean hands and a pure in heart. We have not fallen down our soul into vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. And it goes on to say who the King of Glory is. Songs like that we don't hear anymore. They are missing from the order. Lots of things happening, and some Rastafari doesn't trust what is in the Bible and doesn't want to hear about it and think that the Bible is so deceptive. In other words, if we could remove certain passages from the Bible which seems to be deceptive, then we would have a better Bible. According to His Majesty, we in Ethiopia have one of the oldest versions of the Bible, quote, end quote. He never said from the Bible. From our understanding, the Bible came from Ethiopian ancient book. The practice among Rastafari is to select whole passages from the Bible and use them. I would not invite my grandson to be Rastafari mentions wayward youth, don't know any Bible passages. One Good Friday, we reasoned about the crucifixion story. I told him that in order to know Rastafari, it's best to have God in his soul. After personal struggles, my grandson went to church. One day we were discussing the book of Revelation that mentions the number 666, which referred to the name of a man and a beast. Rastafari today have formed their own interpretation of this passage. There are many content variations of the King James Version of the Bible and many New English Bible. One point of conflict is clean and unclean beasts that should be used food. The pastor even told my grandson that what was written in the King James Version of the Bible was only for the Jews. It seems like the Jews were the only people God loved. Parenting, Sister Jacqueline. My youths going to school as Rastafari went through many hard times. It was like a battlefield for them. Every day the youths came home, they complained that other children dragging off their tams. I tried to hold the faith and went to the school as a parent and resolved the matter in best ways possible. It can be sometimes hard when you are the single parent. Many times I go to the hills to work the field in order to have money for food. I even go and pick herbs when I am called to do so. I do these jobs to be independent and not to be looked down upon by society. However, when you have a kingman, the youths are more protected and will have fewer tendencies to go astray. In these trying times, Rastafari always provide ways of survival. I can say now that my youths have not gone astray. One or two of them cut their locks, and I eventually have to live with my mother. I have 4 children living at my gates. My eldest daughter now lives in St. Elizabeth with her 2 small children. Although my youths cut their locks, they realize that there's no other way than the liberty of Rastafari. Daughter Dean, when my youths were little children, they were the sample Rasta in the community, as they were the only Rastafari children in the community. My little son had to wear his tam to school and his sister her head wrap. Many times other children pull off the wrap. The teacher tried tie, but it was not done properly. As such, I had to show the class teacher to do it. She was kind enough to listen to my instructions. When my daughter moved on to big school, the teacher's instruction was to use ribbons in the hair and a new style for a head wrap. My daughter always comes home with complaint. As such, I had to teach my daughter how to fight and defend herself. On occasion, her class teacher had to intervene and put an end to the harassment. The first child I had suffered from malnutrition. The doctor did some experiment on her. She died soon after. She was born in 1971 and died 1972. After that incident, the top Trelawney brethren showed lots of love and kindness. They provided me with a crocus bag of food, vegetable, and herb every weekend. I always remember the teachings of Jesus Christ, who said, "Train up child in the way they should grow, so that when that child becomes older, they will never depart from it." I had some difficulty sending the children to school. There was one situation when some people took away my 2 children because I had to seek work on the Cuba-Jamaica job site in the 1970s. Still, when they were grown and returned to me, my daughter ended up in bad company, which attracted the attention of a probation officer who placed her in a child facility of safety. Vaccinations, Daughter Dean. Vaccinations are really not a good thing. I learned that all sorts of animal blood can be mixed in the vaccinations. Sometimes I observe the warlike behavior of my 2-year-old great-grandchild and now conclude that his erratic behavior can be the result of sets of vaccinations that were given to him. My first 2 children that I grew up during my early days as Rasta, the baby that I had during my Rastafari years was not given that injection either. The child I had, who was in the care of my grandfather, was vaccinated. Sister Jacqueline, my first 2 children were vaccinated. None was given to the last 2 either. However, vaccination is one of the main requirements for a child to attend government school. On one occasion that my children's father took the youths to the clinic, for some reason he left and I had to supervise them after they were given the vaccine, and we went home. Was not happy. They said that I sat down in the chair like a nice woman and allowed them to be vaccinated. I never carried them there anymore. I can remember when my son was getting his vaccine, his sister ran out of the clinic. It was one nurse who saw what was happening and took her back inside. The government is presently introducing a vaccine for all the girls in high school, and there will be consequences if they don't take it. I have my daughter in high school, and she will not take it. So I am waiting to see what the government will do. DAWTA Dean. The Ethiopian World Federation have reasons to defend parents don't give permission for their children to be vaccinated. It is also required that the EWF should have 5,000 members to have a seat in the United Nations. When you consider all the atrocities against the African people, that requirement is unjustified. We should have a speaker in that chair, whether 5,000 members or not. How do you see the international Rastafari community raising funds for the daughters' quarters? DAWTA Dean. Yes, that is of a necessity and vital importance. It is written that those who let captives into captivity, in days to come they will submit themselves with pieces of silver. I would like to ask the world about world peace. What world peace mean to them? Our slave bosses in their masses accept that they were wrong to enslave us and to treat us the way they did. They should now say our foreparents did this thing to you. We are sorry, and whatever you need, we will help you to get yourselves together. Sister Jacqueline, the situation of the daughters' quarters on the Pitford Nyabingi grounds is so deplorable. It's an eyesore to visitors and the general Rastafari community. The Order of the Nyabingi. Sister Jacqueline, in the time of ancient Bongo Watto and Bongo time, I had good administration. After that, the situation began to deteriorate. DAWTA Dean, the Nyabingi Creed, which is, let the aged be protected, let the naked be clothed, let infants be cared for, let the hungry be fed, would require an NGO status within the house of the Nyabingi for these things to manifest. It's unfair the way in which Rastafari, especially the ancients, are being treated. Very rare you see a Rastafari rise to a status of a good house. Most times, it's a rough and hard life. I think the Rastafari Nyabingi house needs some attention from these young reggae artists who have benefited from music. Message to the international Rastafari community, especially Rastafari sisters. Sister Jacqueline, the greatest thing in this time is to give all praise to the Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. Always trod with clean hands and a pure heart, and remove petty prejudice from among yourself and from one another. Daughter Dean, righteousness exalts a nation and sin a reproach, no matter what color or creed. Rastafari is the true liberty for everyone. I just hope that the nation will see and does the right thing. I remember all the Christs who has revealed themselves through the ages, but right now, within this dispensation, it is Kadamawi, Emperor Haile Selassie we have before us. Search the history of His Majesty Kadamawi Haile Selassie and know that he is a mystical person and we should try to be like him, also do a lot of meditation. Haile Selassie and Empress Menen are the only father and mother of creation for us black people, the example of righteousness. Whosoever have others, they can show them to us. We should all try to live up as sisters, dress appropriate, leave the naked clothes, the tight up tights. Don't expose yourself to every man's eyesight. Also speak right. Don't use nasty and dirty words, and female mothers in righteousness will guide us along.